Do you believe that in the middle of the ocean, there's a place where people drive beneath the sea to get to work? A place almost completely cut off from the outside world, yet one where no one wants to leave. What keeps them there? And what is life there really like? Today, we're exploring the Faroe Islands, one of the most isolated places on Earth, a land of Vikings. A place with no McDonald's, no real prisons, and yet full of things you wouldn't expect. The first time people arrive here, many think they've reached the edge of the world, surrounded by nothing but wind rock and waves. There are roads where you can stand in complete silence, hearing nothing at all, except the wind. But the longer they stay, the more they realize this place is both more raw and more modern than they ever imagined. And the question that lingers the most is, why do more than 50,000 people choose to stay here instead of leaving? This place carries a strong sense of isolation, yet it's far from being left behind. And that's exactly what makes it so unusual. Located between Norway and Iceland, the Faroe Islands are a group of 18 small islands in the North Atlantic, formed by ancient volcanic activity millions of years ago. It may sound very geographical, but once people actually set foot here, the first thing they notice is surprisingly simple. There are almost no tall trees, just wind and long stretches of green hills clinging tightly to steep black cliffs rising from the ocean. There are three things in abundance here: wind waves and sheep. Not by chance is the name Faroe derived from sheep islands. Sheep actually outnumber people here, and they have become an inseparable part of the land itself. The wind blows almost year-round, carrying salt from the sea, making it difficult for trees to grow. And over time, people begin to realize something in the Faroe Islands' nature isn't just scenery. It's what shapes the way people live. The weather here is almost impossible to predict. A morning may still be sunny, but just minutes later, rain and fog roll in, along with strong winds you can feel against your skin. Locals have a familiar saying: If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. It sounds like a joke, but after just a few days, people realize it's almost completely true. There are days when they haven't even adjusted to the morning weather, and by afternoon, everything has already changed. Sometimes, someone can be standing there taking photos, and just minutes later, everything in front of them turns into a wall of white fog. Rain falls nearly all year, and the wind almost never disappears. In the summer, daylight stretches almost all day, with nights where it's hard to tell day from night. But when winter arrives, everything reverses completely. Daylight lasts only a few short hours, and most of the time is spent in darkness. This kind of weather makes it impossible for life here to function in a typical way. Every plan depends on nature. There are days when the wind is so strong that even opening a door becomes difficult. And traveling between islands isn't always possible whenever you want. You can't control life here the way you might in a city. You have to adapt to it. People here don't try to fight nature. They don't try to conquer it. They simply learn how to live with it. And maybe that's why life here moves slower, less rushed, very different from what people are used to in cities. Not just slower, but an entirely different way of living. There are also residents that seem to be everywhere. First, there are sheep so many that they outnumber people. They roam freely across the hills and sometimes appear right in the middle of the road. When driving here, the most common thing is stopping to let sheep pass. No one rushes, no one honks. Everything just unfolds naturally. There are also puffins. During breeding season, tens of thousands gather along the coastal cliffs, especially on remote islands like McDonald. From a distance, the cliffs seem to move, not because of the land, but because there are simply so many birds. At first glance, this place may seem harsh, with strong winds, constant rain, rugged terrain, and near total isolation from the rest of the world. But it's that very harshness that directly shapes how people live here. It forces them to slow down, to be more flexible, and to rely on one another. And that's when a question begins to emerge. What truly keeps them here? Nature is constantly changing, but what keeps people here is not just the landscape. It is the way they connect with one another and with their own identity. The Faroes began settling here around the 9th century during the Viking Age. But Vikings were not a single uniform group, as many people tend to think. They came from different regions, carrying different stories and origins before eventually arriving in remote places like this. Over time, those individuals formed a small community with a very strong and clearly defined sense of identity. Today, the Faroe Islands are part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but the Faroes have kept many things that are distinctly their own. They have their own flag. They have their own language, Faroes, which comes directly from Old Norse. These are not just symbols, they are still present in everyday life, serving as a way for them to avoid being absorbed into the rest of the world. That identity is not only expressed through language, but also through everyday habits. The cuisine here still preserves traditional methods such as fermented lamb that is air-dried by the ocean wind. The taste may not be familiar to many, but for the locals it is part of memory, part of the climate, and part of a way of life closely tied to nature. There is a small story that reveals a great deal about how they see their identity. For a time, Faroese was not supported on platforms like Google Translate. In many other places, that would only be a minor inconvenience, and people would quickly switch to a more widely used language. But here, they chose differently. People from local authorities to volunteers came together to build their own language data. They recorded videos, captured spoken phrases, and translated them piece by piece, slowly but persistently. No one required them to do it. They did it because they wanted to preserve it. This story is not really about technology, it is about a choice. They do not wait for others to do things for them, and they are not willing to lose their identity simply for the sake of convenience. Living in a place this isolated, many might assume that people would become more distant from one another. In reality, the opposite is true. That isolation brings them closer together. Relationships do not need a clear reason to begin. A glance, a nod, or a simple greeting is often enough to start a conversation. Everything happens naturally, as if people have known each other for a long time. This is most clearly reflected in the culture of inviting others into the home. Not modern restaurants, not elaborate meals, but a small kitchen, a simple meal, and ordinary conversations. Yet those simple moments are enough to erase the distance between people. In a place like this, it is not really possible to live separately. People depend on one another, and over time, that dependence becomes a normal part of life. The way they live is also reflected in their surroundings. Villages here are often very small, sometimes with only a few dozen residents. In places like Gassadalur, there are only around 16 people. Homes are built to withstand strong winds and harsh weather, often with grass roofs that sometimes are even maintained by sheep grazing on top. They are not built to impress, but to endure. Here very little exists purely for decoration. There is no excess, only what is truly necessary for living. This can also be seen in what they continue to preserve. The Faroes' chain dance is simple, with no stage and no instruments, just people standing in a circle, holding hands, singing and stepping in rhythm. It is not meant for performance, but for being together and for remembering those who lived here before. That sense of connection is also what creates a feeling of safety. Not through rules or control, but through the way people treat each other every day. People trust one another, and over time, that trust becomes something natural. In many other places, people lock their doors and remain cautious. But here, life feels simpler because everyone understands they are part of a community where people depend on each other. A woman from Thailand who moved here once said that she feels happy living in this place with no pollution and no crime. There is a small detail that says a lot. People can directly call the Prime Minister because his phone number is publicly available. Not every place needs to be loud. Not every place needs to develop quickly. Here, they have chosen a different way to live. If you only look at the Faroe Islands on a map, it's easy to think of them as a place defined by distant small islands scattered across the North Atlantic, separated by the sea, divided by mountains, and shaped by constantly changing, unpredictable weather. Everything about it suggests isolation, and to some extent, that's true. But the more you observe how life actually unfolds here, that idea starts to shift. The Faroes don't live as if they're trapped between the ocean and the mountains. That's the difference. In many places around the world, when geography creates barriers like these, people tend to accept inconvenience as part of life. Getting from one place to another often means taking detours, relying on ferries, waiting on schedules, and adjusting life around limitations that can't be changed. But here, they chose a different approach. They don't deny their isolation, nor do they pretend it doesn't exist. Instead, they face it directly and solve it in a very straightforward way, not through words, but through infrastructure. That's what changed how the islands function as a unified whole. And that becomes clear the moment you start moving between them. Traveling here isn't just about driving from one place to another. It's about moving through a system that connects places that were once completely separate. Roads cut through mountains and continue beneath the ocean, and sometimes the only thing interrupting your journey is something completely ordinary, like a group of sheep standing in the road. A reminder that nature is still present in every part of life here. On a map, the islands look disconnected. In reality, they're tightly linked not by massive bridges or grand structures, but by something much simpler. Tunnels. A lot of them. There are more than 20 tunnels through mountains, along with several that run deep beneath the ocean, forming a system that makes travel seamless instead of fragmented. What's remarkable isn't just the number, but how naturally they're integrated into everyday life. They don't feel like engineering feats meant to impress. They've simply become normal. The first time someone drives into an undersea tunnel, the expectation is usually simple. Just a longer stretch of road underground, maybe a little different. But that feeling only lasts for a moment before a realization sets in. They're driving beneath the ocean. Above them isn't just rock. It's an immense body of water, vast and heavy enough that under normal circumstances it would feel overwhelming. But inside the tunnel, everything is stable. The lighting is consistent. The road is smooth and traffic flows as usual. There's no panic, no sense of danger. Just a strange awareness that something extraordinary has become completely ordinary. That feeling continues even after returning to the surface, where roads stretch across the islands with an attention to detail that's easy to notice. The pavement is smooth, the design is clean, and everything feels intentional, as if every detail exists to serve, not to stand out. And then there are moments that feel almost unreal, like encountering a roundabout beneath the ocean. At first, it's hard to process. A roundabout underwater. It's not there to impress, nor is it meant to symbolize technological achievement. It exists simply because it's the most logical way to keep traffic flowing in a system that runs through mountains and under the sea. The ocean separates the islands they go through it. Mountains block the way they go through them. That's how this place works. What's striking isn't just the infrastructure, but the scale of what they've accomplished with such a small population. With just over 50,000 people, fewer than many districts in large cities, they've built and maintained a system that allows life to function smoothly in a surprisingly modern way. Travel between islands feels seamless. There's also an interesting little detail across the entire archipelago. There are only about 9 traffic lights, and that's already considered a high number. It's not surprising, really. There's only one university, one airport, one TV station, a few hospitals, and a handful of newspapers. Because of that, most people here will probably never truly know what rush hour feels like. Everything runs steadily and efficiently in a quiet way. Even with a slower pace of life, this place isn't cut off from the world. Connections are constant, transportation still functions, and life continues without the sense of limitation. People often associate with isolation. There's an airport, ferries, and stable internet, everything working together to ensure that being far away doesn't mean being disconnected. And that's where a paradox begins to emerge. The Faroes are isolated, but not disconnected. In some ways, this might be one of the least isolated places within its own isolation. They chose to build what's necessary to stay connected, but not to let that connection change who they are. Infrastructure exists to serve life, not to make it louder, faster, or more overwhelming. They don't trade peace and quiet for convenience. They don't change their pace of life just because of pressure to move faster. Instead, they preserve their small scale, their community, and their way of living, while building just enough so that no one has to leave, simply because life becomes too difficult. An economy built on doing one thing well. At first glance, the economy here does not seem remarkable. There are no large cities, No busy shopping districts, no crowded streets constantly in motion, and none of the noise that people usually associate with development. Everything feels quiet, almost slowed down, as if time moves differently compared to the rest of the world. It is easy to think that this place is falling behind. But that thought does not last long, because beneath that quiet surface, the economy here is far stronger than it appears. What makes it even more interesting is that it does not rely on tourism. Visitors still come, but they are not what keeps this system running. The foundation of everything here comes from something more familiar, more fundamental. The ocean, fishing and salmon farming are not just industries, they are the backbone of the entire society. A local once said very simply that without fish, they would not be able to live here. And in that moment, it becomes clear that in a place like this, the ocean is not scenery, it is life. The climate is harsh, the land offers very few options, and out of all possible choices, the sea is the one thing they can rely on. But what makes the difference is not just what they do, it is how they do it. They do not operate at a level that is just enough to survive. They do it with structure. From fishing to farming, from processing to export, they control almost the entire value chain. That allows a small community to remain in control of its own source of survival. And when people control their own resources, they do more than survive. They grow. This economy may not look like a high-tech system in the usual sense, but it operates with remarkable efficiency. It is built on traditional foundations, yet the results tell a different story, with an average income exceeding $60,000 per year, higher than Denmark, and higher than many places considered more developed. Taxes here are relatively high, but in return, unemployment remains very low, often below 3%. That stability is not just a number, it is something that can be clearly felt in everyday life. There are few people, but each person has a role. There is no sense of excess, no feeling of having to compete just to survive. In a community like this, survival is not based on outperforming others, but on doing one's part well and trusting that others will do the same. That unspoken agreement shapes how people work and live. In large cities, opportunities may be abundant, but they come with pressure to move faster, do more, and constantly keep up. Here, opportunities may be fewer, but there is rarely a sense of falling behind. The pace is slower, but it is not stagnant. In many places, development means expansion, doing more, moving faster, becoming bigger. Here, the approach is different. They focus on doing one thing exceptionally well, and perhaps that is enough. When something is done well enough, there is no need to chase everything else. Of course, relying on a single industry always comes with risk, and they understand that. But it is a risk they accept, because in return, they have a system that is simple, clear, and difficult to break. And perhaps that is what stands out the most. No place is perfect, and the Faroe Islands are no exception. Beneath the calm and quiet surface that people notice, At first, there are realities that are less visible things that do not appear immediately, but gradually reveal themselves over time. One of the most noticeable is the imbalance between men and women. At first glance, the difference does not seem very large, just a few thousand more men than women. But in a community of just over 50,000 people, that gap is significant enough to shape daily life in ways that are difficult to ignore. And it does not come from a single cause. Part of it comes from the nature of work here. Many industries are still closely tied to the sea, such as fishing and aquaculture, physically demanding jobs that are still largely done by men. But the larger reason comes from a quieter process. Young women leave. They leave to study, to work, to experience things that are not available on the islands. And over time, many of them do not return. The numbers slowly stop being statistics. They become part of everyday life. In a place like this, finding a partner is not always easy. In many parts of Europe, immigration can be a sensitive topic, but in the Faroe Islands, it takes on a different meaning. Over time, many men begin to look beyond the islands. Relationships increasingly form with women from Southeast Asia, especially from countries like the Philippines and Thailand, not as a romantic trend, but as a practical way to build a family and continue life in a place with limited options. According to BBC, there are now more than 300 women from Thailand and the Philippines living in the Faroe Islands. And for those who come here, it is not a small change. Leaving behind a tropical climate to live in a place defined by cold winds, long winters, and months of darkness requires adaptation, not only physically, but mentally as well. It is a quiet trade-off that is not always visible from the outside. And from that point on, the idea of balance begins to feel fragile, not only in relationships, but in everyday life. The cost of living here is high, not by choice, but by circumstance. Most things have to be imported, which makes even basic necessities more expensive than expected. This becomes clear quickly from a simple meal to everyday expenses. Income is high here, but costs rise with it. People can earn well, but they also spend more just to maintain a normal life. It is a system that works, but one that constantly requires balance between income and expenses. And there is another issue that cannot be ignored when talking about the Faroe Islands. Whaling, a tradition that has existed for generations. For the local community, it is not just hunting, but something tied to history, culture, and survival in a harsh environment. But from the outside, the story looks very different. It becomes a source of controversy, criticism, and something many find difficult to accept. And perhaps this is one of the clearest tensions here, the gap between tradition and modern values, between the way a small community lives and the expectations of the outside world. There is no simple answer, and these islands exist somewhere in between. In recent years, the Faroe Islands have become more well-known. Tourism has increased, and in many places that would lead to rapid development, more construction, more visitors, more change. But here they choose a different path. At certain times, some areas are temporarily closed, not to turn visitors away, but to restore, repair, and protect what already exists. It is not a common decision, but it is consistent. They do not chase numbers. They do not try to become louder or more popular. They choose to hold on to what matters most. And perhaps that is the hardest thing. Not growing faster, but knowing when to stop, knowing the limits, and knowing what is worth keeping. And when everything is seen together, one thing becomes clear. The Faroe Islands are not perfect, but they are rare. And perhaps that is what makes this place different. And maybe what Faroe Islands leaves behind isn't just breathtaking scenery, but a simple question. How fast are we really living? And what for? In a world that keeps getting louder and faster, where everything is often measured by speed or achievement. There are still places that choose a slower way of life, not because they can't go faster, but because they don't need to. They're a day shaped by ocean winds, familiar work. A warm meal and a few old stories can be more than enough. Maybe what matters most isn't whether we stay or leave, but how much of that quiet sense of peace we're able to carry back into our own lives.